Hey guys, I'm Kimberly Scott. This is my husband Tim, and we are going to talk about marriage today because
Marriage.
we're
It's
in
a good
this.
thing.
I know, right? And we've been married a
We
few
are
years.
married. Yeah, so we're experts.
What's our anniversary coming up? What number? You better get this right.
Coming up. It's going to be great.
It's
gonna
15
be
years.
15 years. It's going to be wonderful.
Oh, you've just failed. You
Okay,
failed.
yeah.
So listen, we're in a series in the East Lake Church Network, and we're talking about things nobody told you, the Nobody
Yeah.
Told Me series.
Starts this weekend.
It starts this weekend,
Yeah.
and we're talking about marriage. We get the topic of marriage today to talk about, and there are a few things that nobody told us when we got married.
What did you fail to hear about? Nobody told you. What
Well,
was that be?
okay, here is the big one, is that nobody told me that conflict can actually be healthy in a marriage.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I'm bugged that nobody told me this. And that I didn't actually see this play out growing up. I grew up in a healthy home. My parents are still married and so in love with each other, but they never had conflict really in front of us children. My dad kind of barked orders and my mom sort of listened.
So there was no conflict
There
because
was-
somebody caved.
Right. And I know behind the scenes, and there was stuff going on, probably. I know for sure. But when my mom hit about 40, she found her voice.
Yeah.
And then I started to see some conflict. But nobody told me going to marriage that actually conflict is healthy and that it's healthy to work through conflict. What about you?
Well, I think everybody out there has different family of origin. You know, you may have one parent that dominates the other parent, and every relationship has conflict. Not ours, because we're so
Perfect.
spiritual, but every marriage has conflict. So when you look at how to navigate that, sometimes you go, well, this is the way my parents did it. And so one spouse may dominate the other. My parents, my mother was like your mother. She was more, passive, and my dad got away with stuff.
Yeah.
I don't get away with stuff in our marriage.
Oh, heck no.
Yeah, you call me on my stuff. So we came up with 4 things that might help people
Work through conflict.
Yeah, and understand there's a healthy way to do that. What's the first one?
Right. The first one is to listen. Oh my goodness. This,
That's not mine.
as my daughters would say, our daughters Carrie and Shar, they love to use this term, holding space for someone.
Yeah.
Listening to them, really
Right.
listening. Listening and asking questions when you listen, because that shows that you're actually listening.
One of the great ways to listen, by the way, is to repeat back, not in a weird way, but to repeat back what the person said.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, no, but to really...
What I hear you saying
Yeah,
is,
what I hear you saying, and,
Yeah.
and don't sound robotic, but to really listen, active listening.
Right.
That's what we need to have.
So important.
Yeah.
One of the quotes that you've said since I've known you that is so powerful is listening is so close to being loved that most people can't tell the difference. And that's true. And actually, because really listening is love when you think
Right.
about it. So
Being heard is powerful.
it is. It's
Yeah.
powerful. So sitting back, parking yourself in a moment with someone, with your spouse, and actually listening to what they have to say without being defensive or personalizing. That's
Right.
pretty powerful. So
It is
listening
powerful. So
is-
the second thing
Yes.
is to speak. And what we mean by speak, by the way, I have never had a problem speaking.
Yes.
So I'm a talker, and hard for me to listen. I'm
Yeah.
learning to listen. I'm
Yeah.
growing.
You're getting
at this,
better.
My old age.
Yes.
I always
Yeah.
said I wanted to be a kindly old man.
I know,
Well,
me
I've got
too. Me
half of
too,
that
Tim.
done. I'm an old man. I'm just not kindly yet. But speaking is, and I think this is what happens sometimes when you have a passive spouse and a dominant spouse.
Right.
Is sometimes to keep peace and to have kind of what looks like healthy conflict, it really means no conflict at all.
Yes.
And that means that person has lost their voice.
Yeah.
You never want to lose yourself in your marriage. You want to actually embrace the oneness that you are together.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about that in this series, how important that is. And that's one of the things. You need to gain your voice.
Right.
I remember you told me that when we first met, because you had been in a relationship that you didn't feel that you had a voice.
No.
And you said, I have my voice. And I didn't know, I am woman, hear me roar. I realize now what you meant by that. But
Yes.
it's a really powerful thing to have a voice, because now you're really functioning on an equal level where you're really embracing the oneness that you are. So that's the second one,
Yeah,
speak.
and the caveat to that, though, I just want to say is our words are powerful.
Right.
So speaking is important, but I would say speak in love as
Oh,
best
exactly.
you can. Step out of anger as
Right.
best you can. Calm down before you speak your words, but speak in love. If you want that person to hear you and to actually communicate truth to them, that they'll be able to assimilate it, you have to say it in a way that they'll actually be able to hear it. So if
Yeah.
you're attacking with your words, instantly the walls go
Yeah.
up and they're not able to hear it.
I plug this book all the time. It's called Crucial Conversations. And in that book, it really talks about how to communicate so the person can hear.
Right.
And how to, for both people, to pour into the pool of meaning.
Yeah, that's
and break down that fear, break down those resistance, and really together communicate well. So
Right.
there's a little plug for a book
Yeah.
there, Crucial
Yeah,
Conversations.
it's a good one. It's a really good one.
What's the third one that we
The
came up
third
with?
one is compromise is not the same as losing yourself. Ooh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Everything you do, every successful relationship you have in life will involve compromise.
Yeah.
That's even in parenting.
So compromise. I grew up in a church home and a Christian home,
Yeah.
and in that it was like kind of no compromise.
Right.
We don't compromise, and
And that was
the-
something to be proud of. Like
yeah,
you
be
don't
proud,
bend,
yeah.
you don't,
And,
yeah.
and it's one thing to compromise your values. It's another thing to compromise your preferences.
Right. That's
So
good.
most of the things that we struggle with is that we fight over preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And when we should be only taking a stand,
Mm-hmm.
not fighting over it, but taking a stand for our values,
Mm-hmm.
our principles, and really the preferences don't matter. And here's how you know the difference between a preference and a real value, something that you have as a conviction. A conviction or value is something you would die for. A
Right.
preference is something that you prefer.
You want,
So
right.
yeah, like I like to have my hair a certain way. That's my.
Sometimes it
didn't
doesn't,
quite get
sometimes
there.
it doesn't.
It took a long 8 hours of sleeping to get this hairdo. Anyway, that's the difference between really having convictions that something you would die for. Those you need to fight for,
Yeah.
but compromising on your preferences is what you do in marriage. That's how marriage works.
Yeah.
And like you said, I didn't realize that there was a healthy way to really communicate and
Right.
have conflict.
Yeah.
And we do have conflict
Yes.
over
Yeah.
over things
Little
that I
things
like.
and big things.
Well, here, let's get to the last one. The last one is.
Wait,
and-
I want to just throw this
Oh,
in.
here it
I'm
comes.
interrupting you in your
Is-
diatribe.
Okay, go ahead.
We're compromising right now,
Yes,
Tim.
let's do it.
I wanted to say this, that the goal in marriage, and when it comes to compromise and conflict, is not to think alike, because that's impossible.
Oh, yeah.
It's to think together.
Yeah, I like that.
So you bring what your thoughts are in communication and what your thoughts are, and you work together as you're communicating your truths and you're thinking together to be able to compromise somewhere in the middle. And actually, sometimes it's not in the middle. Sometimes compromise means I'm going to go 80% and you'll be 20, or sometimes it will be 50-50, or sometimes it'll be 60-40, but you come together and agree to compromise at some place in that to be able to kind of grow together through the process.
So here's some, just capitalizing on what you said there, thinking alike versus thinking together.
Yeah.
So I've watched long-term marriages that have come to really start to look alike the way they think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always thinking together. It's always working together.
Yeah.
It's always communicating and compromising.
That's so good.
So our last
True.
one, real quick,
Yes.
edify.
Yeah, edifying is so important.
Edify means to build up. So
Yeah.
here's our ideas. Listen, speak, compromise, and the last one is edify. Edify means to build up.
Yeah.
And I believe there's two places to build up. So when I speak to you, first person,
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking to you, or second person, I'm saying something to you, and I encourage you.
Yeah.
And then when I speak third person,
Mm-hmm.
I speak about you, I need to edify.
Yeah.
What this does is it removes fear and it creates trust.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in a relationship with somebody that you tear down privately,
Yeah.
it's going to destroy that confidence.
That's
so
true.
there's a lot
And
that
publicly,
yeah,
obviously.
and publicly. So we need to understand that this weekend is going to be a great weekend because we're going to start this series, and you're going to get principles about how to apply this in your life. So this starts this weekend. What nobody told me, and we're going to hit several really powerful areas. Thanks for listening. We hope to see you this Sunday.
Bye, guys.